for in-depth discussions on biggest market, and that's why the telecom companies make more money here. So, what should the ordinary people of Nigeria do, Mr. Brahima? We should stop talking, or we should talk less, because now you talk, you pay more.
Dr. Bate, what the other guests didn't mention was that Nigeria has a very huge market, over 200 million people. You know how many Nigerians have mobile phones, or the number of telephone lines that they have in this market? Let them tell me, is it Zambia, is it Kenya, is it South Africa? What is their number? What is their population? So I want to say quickly that it is inevitable that this tariff will go up. The question is, how will Nigerians adjust? Because already adjusting to the increases in the price of petrol, you can see the roads are practically empty now in Lagos. Because it's not easy to buy petrol of 50,000 into your tank. How many Nigerians can cough out 50,000? Now, consumer spending, disposable income has, in fact, reduced completely. It's not negative, because you're going to worry about other things you spend money on, whether it is food, whether it is petrol, whether it is the cost of transportation, whether it is Medicare, whether it's electricity. So the argument has been that within 2 years of this administration, everything has gone up. Meanwhile, disposable income has not increased. In fact, in many places it has reduced. So why don't we optimize in a way, create a framework where we all meet each other halfway? Because when you increase the electricity bill by more than 200%, tariff of telecom tariff are going up by 50%. Salaries don't go up like that, whether it's in the public sector or in the private sector, except for people who are stealing or who have access to free money, or privileged Nigerians who are in the corridors of power. Maybe they're in a position now to pay all these bills without complaining. I believe that what is even more important is the quality of infrastructure for the services that they provide. We've been in this game now since 2001. And how many years is that now? Why are we still talking about quality of service? It is so bad. So many drop calls. You are using the internet, the data. Sometimes you have a lot of challenges. Your calls are incomplete. And the telecom companies, they must also understand that Nigerians don't trust them. There are all kinds of charges they introduce to the back door. They need to improve on the quality of their service. They can't say now it is this 50% increase that they will now spend to improve the quality of their infrastructure and the quality of services that they offer. I believe this will also make Nigerians to talk less, because we'll actually talk a lot. We will reduce the time we spend talking, but I'm going to be a big problem. It will worsen the digital divide.
Well, Mr. Emokpere, let me come back to you. Now, the telecom operators, they've been talking about a difficult business environment. They've been talking about foreign exchange issues. They've been saying government needs to help them. What do you think government policies can play in this matter? Because the major complaints, they are not about ordinary people like us. They are about government, inflation, cost of operation, business environment. What are the telecom owners saying to government? And what is government's response? Fiber optics, all of those issues.
I would like to give some perspective, because when your guest mentioned that Nigeria is and the population, I'd like to give some perspective into the actual telecommunication market in Nigeria. You know, it was liberalized in around the year 2000, 2001. And that's when we started having this liberalization of this sector. Now, if you compare Nigeria to other countries, first and foremost, all other countries had the benefit of their existing national provider having infrastructure that they could utilize. But Nigeria was not the case. Nigeria was basically defunct and almost virtually comatose at the time this liberalization occurred. So you see the operators having to invest in building infrastructure right from the scratch, as against other countries where these infrastructures are being already in place. And you know, the issue now was that they had to build infrastructure from scratch, and that infrastructure is still being built up until today. We don't have, Nigeria is a very vast country geographically. we are ignoring the fact that the land mass is huge. To build that kind of infrastructure from scratch is a real Herculean task. So basically, the industry has been playing catch up, which is one of the issues why we have been having these challenges. It's been playing catch up. Don't forget, the country is not also stagnant. The population in 2000 is not the same thing as the population in 2025. So this has been the main challenge. Operators are having to play catch up, building infrastructure from scratch, whereby in other climes these infrastructures are in place. All you need to do is minimal investments, but the investments required in Nigeria is huge. Is huge. I can't say. I give you an example. There was an operator who spent over 7 billion naira in a year just to handle fiber cuts, whereby once they build the fiber infrastructure, it's being cut by different forms of developmental issues, be it road construction, things of that nature, and vandalization and things like that. 7 billion naira. If you adjust that for inflation today, that's over 30 billion naira in a year. So it is not, when we say all these things, we can see it from one side of the divide, but trust me, there is nobody that wants not to provide services to customers. The customer is who pays. But this issue has been on for so long. There was virtually no infrastructure in Nigeria. I remember even when I was working for one of the MNOs, we had to build transmission backbone from scratch. Whereas other countries, you don't even need to do that. Okay, and then now we're talking about other infrastructure that still need to be put in place. It's a huge task. Now, back to your question, when you mentioned about what government can do in regards to that, we already see discussions having been made by the Ministry of Communication talking about government wanting to champion 90 kilometers and 90,000 kilometers of fiber around the country. I think these are good positive steps that can be taken. We also have, I think, an infrastructure fund. I think that should be made available to local operators to also utilize for the development infrastructure in the country. Also, things like incentives for anybody who invests in infrastructure that allows you to deploy solutions that are less energy consuming. These are measures that the government can take. But trust me, it's not an issue of just wanting to increase tariffs for tariff's sake. There was a dearth of infrastructure in Nigeria 2020 when the liberalization occurred, and there is still a dearth in infrastructure. It's still not enough to cover the vast terrain of the country. We need to look at that and consider that as a real factor, okay, in this regard. And we need to get to a point where infrastructure is not an issue, because once infrastructure is not an issue, then service quality, you will not see operators competing on service. But right now, operators are competing on infrastructure. If I have infrastructure in a location before you, I can generate more revenue from that location than you. And in other countries, even in Africa, this infrastructure divide is not a means for which operators compete. People compete on services they render. Nigeria is still very, very far from that El Dorado, so to speak.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to Mr. Ibrahima. Mr. Ibrahima, you are a public relations expert. You are into hospitality. You are into other businesses. Now, how is this proposed 50% tariff hike likely to impact your personal or professional telecom expenses? The various areas you are involved in, media, public relations, hospitality, and all of that. And, from a public relation perspective, what are the major concerns you've observed among Nigerians about this proposed tariff hike?
You see, public relations is more about perception. And the optics generally are not very, very positive, in terms of how Nigerians are feeling about increases in tariffs, the inflationary trend. Everything is, the impact on consumer spending is very heavy. Now that is even on the one part. Nigerians, I can say, without any fear of contradiction, are willing to even pay more. But what is the guarantee that they will get the quality of service that they are paying for? Look, okay, let us even on the flip side of this conversation talk about the electricity that we now have to pay more. For example, I'm a band A, but I run generator every day. And I was engaging the NEC people in Abuja through a mutual friend the other day that they should intervene, that this band A business is not working. So what is going on? But it's like the focus is more on the money they will make. From 45 feeders as at April, 6 months down the line, they have 150 feeders moving everybody to band A, by force and by fire. Let me use that street lingo. But let's come back to the telecom, conversation. My friend, who is also on this call, is talking about infrastructure. We can't be talking about infrastructure after 24 years, since 2001. In actual fact, this is the 2050 of the that sector coming into Nigeria. Before the current administration setting, started in May 29, 2023, what did they do in terms of investment in 22 or 23 years in the area of infrastructure to provide the right service? For me, they have made a lot of money, and I think most of that money should have been invested in infrastructure, development. They can't be talking about that.
No, but they say they have to buy diesel. They have to provide security for their own infrastructure.
I agree.
And they are not sure that the Nigerian government is going to meet them halfway.
So,
I think this is the point that the outcome president is making.
That is a conversation they should have with the government. You see, the problem is, at the end of the day, it's consumers that everybody, is putting this pressure on. Failure of services, failure of policy. At the end of the day, the people that take this beating are the consumers, the ordinary people. So, if we have not had regular electricity supply all these years, and you're not forcing Nigerians to pay more, it's not a problem, but is the service available? What is the guarantee now that with this 50% hike, that the quality of service will improve? I'm sure we'll still return to this table sometime in the future to have this kind of conversation, to look back and say, oh, you increased your tariff 1 year ago or 2 years ago. What is the situation with the quality of service? There are a lot of drop calls, or you are listening to the other guy at the other end of the call. You are not hearing, the person is not hearing you, and so on and so forth. A lot of drop calls, even data challenges, and so on and so forth. But I believe that in the same way Nigerians now are, looking at how they move from point A to point B because petrol is now expensive, they will also now reduce their talk time. And those who have access to Wi-Fi, maybe they would have to also learn to, because the cost too will go up, whether you are using a Wi-Fi or using an internet modem, or you're buying data on your phone. These costs are going to go up definitely. So we'll spend less but the impact will be, there are a lot of Nigerians who are doing online education. That is a big concern for me. I don't know how that is going to impact. If you were spending 20,000 on data previously in a month, you're now going to spend 30,000 naira. And this 50% looks like a bait. Because I was listening to the Minister of Finance, from Davos, and he was saying something like, this is just a first step. So maybe this 100% they are still aiming at what the telecom operators ask for. So 50% is like, don't just go straight to 100%, but let's keep it in view. I'm telling you, we'll get to 100% because that's what the telecom operators want anyway.
Okay, let's ask the outcome president. Could there have been an alternative solution to rising operational costs for the telecom companies without passing the burden to consumers?
I dare say there is no alternative, because the operators don't have any control over the rising costs. We don't have a control over diesel. We don't have control over power, and it's not an issue unique to telecom operators alone. And then they are being made to bear the brunt of the whole costs. Costs have increased across all sectors, costs have increased across all industries. It is not a whole issue that telecom operators have a cost increases across board. I'm even sure that even running this your radio program, you can't tell me that your own costs have not increased over the last several years. So I think it's a bit unfair to say or to just focus on the telecom industry and exempt us from the ability to adjust tariffs as the market forces demand. I think what the issue is, what we should be focused on, is actually what the gentleman raised just now as regards to quality of service. How do we ensure that the quality of service improves, considering this rising cost? And I can tell you for free, the regulator is clamors heavily on operators for this quality of service issue. Quality of service, if we don't know, has actually improved, and there are indices to show that they have improved over the last 1 year, which is one of the targets that was set before even this tariff increase was approved. Don't forget, this has been an ongoing negotiation for several years, and this is the first time it has increased over several years. So it's not a new issue. So the regulator is very, very mindful of the fact that this will be the issue. At the end of the day, what is the consumer experience? What's the user experience? And I think it has improved over the past couple of years. Now, what are the guarantees going forward? What are the guarantees going forward for the consumer in terms of its quality of service issue? These are already being baked into this increase. Targets are being met. Actually, the NCC has actually updated their quality of service standard requirements. I've been in several meetings where they have reeled out new quality of service parameters for operators to meet, and these are already being met. I think what we should also do is to also see how we can also educate the general populace on the importance of even communication infrastructure. We see communication infrastructure damaged at will. Some of these issues we talk about, somebody is digging up a road, he cuts a communication fiber, and there is no communication in those areas. So the critical nature of infrastructure has been passed. Executive order has been given, and then we're working on the framework for this to be implemented. And I think when all these things are done, the consumer will be the net beneficiary.
Mr. Emokpere, if I may jump in here, you say consumers are going to cut fiber cables.
No, I didn't say consumers. It's because not consumers cutting fiber.
Okay, Nigerians.
I said these are the things that the operators experience. Okay.
Okay.
And because the infrastructure is not treated as critical, there is no repercussion for when these issues occur.
Okay, but
now
very briefly,
the executive order has been passed. Okay, that has made communication infrastructure critical. A framework is being put in place, and we believe that once all these are in place, the net beneficiary is the consumer ultimately.
Okay, but these consumers, they don't trust government. They don't trust the telecom operators. Do you think telecom operators and the NCC have been transparent enough to justify this increase, which you say is necessary? Because the people don't trust them. The attitude of the people is that these people are lying to us. They just want to make money. So why do you think there is that trust deficit?
I think the trust deficit has even been born about the lack of proper communication about the issues, and also, which is one of the things we're trying to correct and change. Hence me being on your program to educate the populace on the general issues. NCC has a website. All data as regards to consumer patterns, subscriber patterns, quality of service checks, they are on their website. You can go there now and you will see all these data. So, but I think the issue has just been maybe a lack of awareness as regards to what was done, has been done, and what is being done. There is every data is actually online right now. As I speak to you, you can go to their websites. you will see the performance of each operator. You will see their quality of service. You will see a graph showing how quality of service has improved over the last 1 or 2 or 3 years. There are indices that are being measured. So these informations are public knowledge. Okay, but I think the fact that maybe people don't know where to go to get this information, or they don't check them. Even recently, the regulator has actually even rebased some of the industry data and has even made it more accurate in terms of subscriber data, for example. Because when some people say, oh, we have 200 million lines, 100 and something million lines, the NCC has actually rebased and come out with more accurate data as regards to number of lines. And don't forget, we still have people who have multiple lines in one subscriber. All these are being corrected and they are in place. So I think the reason for the mistrust is maybe a lack of awareness. We are hoping that programs like this will help change the awareness of the populace. There is no operator that doesn't want to provide quality of service or good service. Ultimately, whoever is consuming the service is the ultimate payer of the service.
Okay.
If they don't provide the service, we cannot speak. We are talking to you now on this program is because of communication infrastructure.
Okay. Okay. Before we take calls and we throw the conversation open to our listeners, Mr. Brima, let me come back to you. What role do you think consumer advocacy groups can play in either opposing or negotiating these tariff hikes? It's still at the level of proposal. We're told it will take effect in February. Is there still a room for consumer protection?
I really don't think so, but I think consumer advocacy groups should step forward. I'm aware the Nigerian Labour Congress, I think was it yesterday, the President Joe Ajero, they are resisting this hike, and they believe that Nigerians have been made poorer, because of too many increases, in different sectors. And the question is, the level of awareness is also very, very poor. You see, when you explain to Nigerians, this is why we need to increase our tariff, the assumption is that Nigerians should understand. And the justification the telecoms operators are making is that, the cost of goods and services have gone up in other sectors and they have not increased in 12 years. Well, that is a valid point, no doubt. But the question is, Nigerians have become poorer. They are hungry. Their disposable income is really cannot take you home. So anybody who is still lucky to have a job, in 2014, Dr. Bati, the value of the dollar was 150. You could get a dollar for 150 naira, at most 155 in 2014. And then look at the significant jump. I agree that there have been policy failures, somersaults. And the problem is, Nigerians at the end of the day bear the brunt of all these failures. That is the challenge. That's the problem. That is why I agree with you. They don't trust government. Each government comes and goes. There is no improvement technically in the different sectors. There are some universities now that have increased their school fees. Parents have to withdraw their children. So what kind of society are we building? So the truth of the matter is, there has to be, from the perspective of government, they need to do more. Because really, you cannot blame the telecom sector people for saying, we also have to survive. We have an obligation to survive, to meet our. So if you look at every sector, things have actually gone up. So that's the point they're making. But government too, they also need to do more to build that trust. Because it is true, Nigerians don't really trust any government. They just believe they come and go, take care of themselves and leave. At the end of the day, they pass the bill to the consumer, pass the extra charges to the consumer. So consumers have to be bearing the brunt of policy failures, of our government inefficiencies.
Okay. On that note, the ATCOM president, Mr. Tony Emoekpere, Mr. Ibrahima, who is here with me in the studio in Lagos. Let's take a quick commercial break. And remember, those of you who have been listening to us, you can join the conversation by calling 0700 1051 1051. You can send us messages via WhatsApp at 0909 916 4403. And you can also engage with us on our social media accounts at City 1051 on Zoom, Instagram, and Facebook as we take this commercial break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly, but you don't know about it. It's okay.
When you need unbiased information, balanced analysis, reviews, and insight on the policies and programs that concern you, listen to City Talks with Ruben Abati. Be a part of it. Call 0700 1051 1051 to lend your voice on topics and help shape our country for the better.
My name is Ruben Abati. I will be your host on City Talks from noon to 1 p.m. every Saturday. Join me as we dissect major issues of public interest. You will be glad you did.
City Talks with Ruben Abati on your number one lifestyle station, City 1051. From noon to 1 p.m. every Saturday.
Welcome back from that commercial break. For those of you just tuning in, we've been discussing the proposed telecom tariffs hike, which will see you paying more for making phone calls, for sending text messages, for exchanging conversation within the digital divide. And we have two guests, the president of the ATCON, the Association of Telecom Companies of Nigeria, Mr. Tony Emoekpare, and we also have Mr. A. Brima, who is an expert in media, hospitality, public relations, and we've been able to enjoy two different perspectives from both gentlemen. Our lines are now open. We can take calls on 07001051 1051. WhatsApp 0909 916 4403, and then via social media accounts at City 1051. Do we have a caller on the line? Hello, good afternoon. Your name, your location, and please make it brief.
My name is Mr. Collins. Dr. Ruben Abati. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I've been listening to your discussion, and somebody mentioned some hidden charges. The service providers depend on the consumers, which they did not elaborate very well. I want to know some hidden charges, those very, very insignificant, but like, for example, I'm talking about when you make a call. At the end of the call, they are there to show you, maybe, for example, you made the call was lasting for 35 seconds. When the telecom provider sends you their SMS or your last call, they will add 1 second there, and that 1 second you pay for it. And nobody, this is so little that nobody talk about it. But imagine millions of calls being made every day, and thanks the little charges, and nobody is talking about this thing. I want to hear something about that, please, Mr. Dr. Abbas. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Via Zoom, I see Mr. Lufemi Awuyemi is up. Mr. Awuyemi, if you could quickly intervene. Lufemi Awuyemi, please.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay.
First of all, I would like to acknowledge Tony's commentaries, but there are so few things I think Tony should bear in context. One of the critical things that has enabled this country to go forward has been one of our greatest points is what happened in the telecommunications sector. So the fact that he is seeking for a new increase today is not so strange to most people who understand how the economy has moved. So what he's doing on this program is very accurate and it's okay. But here's where he misses the point. The point is not about what you are doing, because as you are carrying costs, the consumer is also carrying a lot of costs. The consumer has to power his energy as well, and he pays an increasable cost. The consumer also has to power so many other things around himself in order to get this. So the effective cost for a Nigerian consumer using telecom has gone higher. But the arguments they've made is that the telecoms is a fundamental enabler for growth in Nigeria. But at what cost? at what cost? Because now you've done an increase right now to adjust your pricing, which is, I agree with you. It's a very, very difficult thing for you to sustain your business. Maybe the argument you are making is a different thing. That's why you need people like a Ibrahim or whatever to make that. But I'm saying to you that the argument does not resonate with the consumer, who is also carrying costs to use your service. So when you find a consumer using your service and you are also carrying costs to meet it, that means we have to have a different conversation. I won't take too much time, Dr. Abati. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, if there's no other caller on the line, let's come back quickly to the studio. Well, first, hello? Okay,
Hello?
let's take this call before we come back to the outcome president and Mr. Brown.
Yeah, Ibrahim, I greet you.
Thank you.
Good to know that you're in the studio. And I'm calling just because you're in the studio. This is Dr. Moses. I
Okay.
won't call Dr. Bati show who does not care, so I'm not breaking him. Anyway, as it said, all things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. It is just natural that in the business climate we find ourselves now, the economic, texture of Nigeria, there will be increase in virtually all sectors. So the some point they've given or marshaled for some time now that they have to increase tariffs in stamp 13, they've not done that. But I would always ask, if you succeeded in stamp 13 till now, no businessman runs a business if he's not making profit. I don't believe that they've not made anything. As a matter of fact, one of the service providers, let me even call it an MTN, it started in 1994 in South Africa. But Nigeria market was so big and lucrative, so juicy that at a point they relocated back everything to Nigeria. Are you telling me that nothing is happening here in Nigeria? The infrastructure agreement does not work out with me as well. Just recently, I'm in the teaching world, and over time, by virtue of COVID, we've had to go online in many things, in many ways. I've had to stop giving deadlines to kids, my students, whether post or undergraduate. For one reason, they can't meet it because forget about their every friend that they say that they will increase the tariff officially. It's already on, and the service has not even improved. You ask an average student submit your assignments by 4 p.m. Now they can't even meet it. Where is the money for data? Naira has lost its potency to the point that recently, when you compare with the 47 trillion naira budget of this year, so what Buhari read about 2 or 3 years ago, it's even smaller. Now, when Shetima went to Davos, I was just laughing. Who wants to hear $30 billion economy? When we just pocket money for one municipal in UK or maybe in US, and you think you should be in Davos, we only go out there to make a book of ourselves. Well,
Okay. Hello, Dr. Moses. Are you still online? Okay, looks like that we lost that connection with Dr. Moses. But we have had 3 callers. We had Mr. Collins, we had Mr. Femi Awuyemi, we had Dr. Moses. Outcome President, Mr. Tony Emokpere, let me come back to you. Mr. Collins is saying, why is nobody talking about dropped costs? You make a call for 1 second, 2 seconds. You still get billed for it. Mr. Awuyemi is saying that, yes, Telecom is a fundamental driver for growth. Nobody is arguing about that. But at what cost? Why is the burden so much on the customer that is still carrying huge costs in other places, as Mr. Brahima had pointed out? And Dr. Moses says he does not agree with you that the telecom companies are not making profit. After all, MTN, lost the Nigerian market so much because it's a very lucrative market. Please, what's your response to some of these issues before I come back to Mr. Brahima?
Okay, let me take them one by one. The first caller was saying that actually his actual comment was that when he makes a call, at the end of the call, more seconds are added to his summary of calls. These are done by equipment and systems, so there is no way to program it to add more calls to or more minutes to your airtime, or so to speak. Okay, and don't forget all these operators are also being monitored by the regulator. So and if there are any such infractions, they would have highlighted that by now. I'm yet to see any issue of that regard. And also, please note that the regulator also has a consumer complaint line, and they actually take up all these kind of complaints. So these things are being treated from time to time. Now, on the issue of the consumer also carrying additional costs to provide himself or avail himself of communication services, I think all these things were all that were considered when this increment was being made. Don't forget, the clamor was actually for 100%, and it's only a 50% increase that was given ultimately. So this tariff increase is not done arbitrarily. I want us to also know that there are processes in place that have to take place before a tariff is actually increased. One of the things that is paramount, and I think even in the act, is that a study has to be carried out. So the tariff increase is not a whimsical activity. A study was carried out, and if you had read carefully the Ncc's pronouncement, it was based on a study that was done in 2013. So it's not all these consumer carrying costs, all indices, all parameters are considered when tariffs are increased. So they're not done arbitrarily. Now, on the last caller's call, where he mentioned that these operators are making so much profit, nobody goes into business without a profit motive in mind. I think which is one of the reasons why even this sector was liberalized. A lot of us still forget that before 2000, you had to take a token to make a call, an international call. Now you can sit down in the comfort of your home and even connect via even anywhere you are in the country. So there's always a profit motive in play. But I must let us know and let us understand, a lot of these operators have been actually declaring losses over the last 2 years. And if they continue to declare losses, it will get to a point where communication will actually be stalled in the country. And we all know the contribution of this to our GDP and economic growth. So I think the issue is we should be all looking at how we can ensure these services are up and the consumer is the net beneficiary. Many of these operators you see, I don't know, am I still being heard?
I'm hearing you. We're listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Many of these operators you see have not broken even on capex. So the investment they have made in terms of physical infrastructure, capex expenditure, they have not broken even. They have not broken even, and they are still having to invest more. Like I mentioned earlier in my earlier remarks, that while in other countries you didn't have to invest in the kind of infrastructure we do in Nigeria, we had to do that. You don't say, for example, in other countries, these fiber optic cables we're talking about, even in Africa, even as in a small country as like Cote d'Ivoire, if you had to deploy infrastructure, you don't need to invest so much into fiber optic because the docks are there. Some of the cables were already there when operators came in. But in Nigeria, there was nothing of the sort. They had to build everything from scratch. So it's a challenge which is being met. It's a challenge which will definitely overcome as a country. And we just want to ensure that these services are up, the quality of service improves, and the businesses are sustainable. The industry is sustainable.
We have heard you. It looks like we have another caller on the line. Let's take that caller before we go to Mr. Brima. Hello?
Now, this is just a metaphor. The line dropped of how they will truly improve. I truly believe that you will improve. Read by it. Get after them. It only shows that in 24 years, you can't hold that excuse. You can't give that excuse that you ban at the other end there. It's at this stage, I have to endure this. Even when you couldn't hear me again, my line was in and I've been trying. I've had reason to treat some health issues for some time. That's why I feel that Dr. Bal have not been caring. A case where sometimes I have to go online with a consultant. The line is either ragged, as you can't even hear or communicate properly. And it has to do with an health issue. What are we talking about here? You've been in Nigeria for close to what of a century or 25 years, and you're telling me that you are still battling with infrastructure. No place on earth is an Eldorado. But by now you must have been. Why do you all keep coming to Nigeria and keep asking? The other day, Exalat, they gave a jumbo $1 million, so all this their promo. There was the time that even them can almost give an airplane until let's stop them that no, we can't turn the market into a comedy because you guys are making it big. Which promo would be so that you want to give an airplane and then you're not making anything in Nigeria? Please, as I said, it is for you to increase your tariff. It's not at the condition we're in right now, demand for that. But the timing is ever wrong. Wait, you know the two Nigeria for God's sake, electricity, petrol, everything. The time is not about planning. Lagos keeps getting like a ghost town every time. Please, your timing is too poor for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was Dr. Moses calling back again. But let's come back to you, Mr. Ibrahima. And, you respond to all these issues that have been raised. But more importantly, you have expressed concern about the burden on consumers, customers. Do you think government should provide subsidy? Because government says it's market forces now. You want to fuel your car, it's market forces. You want to buy diesel, it's market forces. You want to talk, if you don't talk well, market forces.
And you want to buy dollars, market forces.
But do you think, at least in this area, maybe government should provide subsidy? Or we are now in the era of market forces in telecom? Yes,
we are running a generator economy and a palliative economy. But I don't think it has come to... Government cannot give subsidy for people to talk or buy data. But I think Dr. Moses and the previous callers, they made the point, and which is precisely my point, that we cannot be paying for the inefficiencies of government. And it is a lie that the telecom operators are not making money. They are now saying, in the last 2 years, they'll be recording losses. What of the previous 22 years? Every year they run promos running into billions of naira. By the way, why is Tony not talking about the over 250 billion naira that banks are owing telecom operators? The SSD charges. It's like banks are getting away with everything in this country. Look at the humongous profits they declared during the last financial year. And now you go to the bank, for example, you don't get cash. You go to the ATM machines, there's no cash. But by the roadside, you have a POS operators who have cash. So what are we talking about? So Nigerians are paying for everything. That is precisely my point. And you have over 130 million Nigerians that are multi-dimensionally poor, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. The level of poverty, Dr. Bati, is too much. There's so much hardship. And every day, there's a new layer introduced. That is basically the point. I don't think it is true that telecom operators are not making profit. We have their reports, financial reports, in the last, since 2001. It is in the same country that the telecom operator said per second billion was not possible. What are we? Then another telecom operator, proved that it was possible. And there are a lot of hidden charges, according to one of the callers. It is true. You have drop costs, you pay for them. Since 2020, when we started doing a lot of virtual communication, more money has been spent on data. Till today, those who are doing online programs, they are spending money on data. So it is not true that check their financial report. It runs into trillions of naira every year. By the time you remove what they are paid to government as taxes, they still have a lot of money to make. It was only recently that the FX component, arising from the devaluation of the naira, that has impacted their bottom line. So please, we know what we're talking about. We are just paying for inefficiencies in the system. It is the consumer that bears the brunt at the end of the day for all the inefficiencies, both in government and outside government. And I think it's very unfair to begin to make life so miserable for Nigerians. That is where I stand. Nigerians are becoming poorer and poorer and poorer. Go on the roads of Abati. The roads are very empty. The other day, I bought petrol into my car, 80,000 naira. The tank was not full. How many Nigerians can bring out 25,000 naira to buy petrol? Now you talk about telecom hike, 50%. Why not 25%? Why not gradually? A phase program. So those are the issues that the burden is too much on Nigerians. And I don't know how effective the NLC threat is, asking Nigerians to boycott telecom operators, but they should get the banks to even pay them what they owe. CBN and NCC has asked the banks to pay at least 85% of that money, which is about 212 billion naira. That's a lot of money. Tony, I expect you to talk about that as well.
Well, I don't know whether Mr. Tony Mokpere still wants to respond to that. But if you want to, please, can we do that in just a minute as we wrap up this program? Mr. Mokpere?
Well, on the USSD debt, I think several banks have already complied. I think only 9 banks are remaining to comply with the. A joint statement was issued sometime in December with CBN and NCC with regards to the requirement for this debt to be settled, and I think that is already work in progress, and we are hoping to see that it's closed eventually, and the framework is being put in place so that such debts don't accumulate so much. The issue of whether 50%, whether it shouldn't have been 25%, I think the main issue is that it's because it has been stagnant for such a long time. Having tariffs stagnant for such a long period of time is why it appears to be so drastic an increase. And I think right now what is going to happen, and the clamor is for it to be a process whereby it doesn't have to get to this stage before any increase occurs. Now, I think also he mentioned the issue about at a point we had a per minute billing, now we have per second billing. That is due to a healthy competition and a healthy competition environment. If we don't have this kind of, if you have, and that's because the issue, the sector at the time was liberalized. Now, it's a liberalized sector, a fully liberalized sector with the independence of the regulator that allows different innovations to come into the sector and more innovative services to come in. The data is continually increasing, the demand.
Hello?
And
Hello? Hello, Mr. Yep.
Even voice calls are actually
okay. Looks like
even a lot of people now make more innovation is to come into play. The sector is tariffs are held back for such a long period of time. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fine. I said if the sector is just held back, this kind of innovations and changes in offerings will not come into play. So I think what we should be looking at is how we ensure that the consumer doesn't get this brunt anymore. If, like was mentioned, if this was gradually done, there won't have been an impact, a huge impact, and all these issues won't have been here. Won't be even sitting down here talking about it. It's because it appears to have happened all of a sudden. That is why we have this clamor, and we don't want to just assure the populace that at the end of the day, the most important thing is what is going to happen. The quality of service is going to increase.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Tony Emepere, President of the Association of Telecommunication Companies of Nigeria. And I would also like to thank you, Mr. Ibrahim, for joining us on this program to discuss the proposed increase. Well, Dr. Moses says the increase has taken effect already.
Nigerians are not happy, Doctor, but Nigerians are not happy.
But to address the impact, I think the NCC and telecom operators must explore alternative solutions, perhaps, if possible, to improve operational efficiency and tax incentives to ease costs. Additionally, fostering transparency and engaging consumer advocacy groups can help strike a balance between industry sustainability and affordability for Nigerians. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out on our social media platforms. And thank you for tuning in, and then join us on social media. Let's continue the conversation. Thank you very much, all our callers and everyone who engaged with us on Zoom and Facebook. The conversation continues online. You can reach me on Instagram at abati1990 and follow at city1051 on all social media platforms. For those of you who tuned in late, you can watch the full show on your YouTube page, City1051. And when you do so, don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments. And don't forget also to join us next week at 12 noon for another exciting edition of City Talks. I'm Ruben Abati, and the show was produced by Kasmi Uzuribo, Damola Uludara, Festus Odemero, Oluwatobiloba Samson, and Abiodun Odunton. The executive producer is Adedoja Allen. Have a great weekend, and thank you for tuning in. Bye for now. See you next week.
Most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of